Welcome to the Microsoft Security Insight Show. The show streams live every Wednesday on YouTube, Twitch, LinkedIn, and Twitter, and streamed directly into your ear the following Monday across all popular podcast networks. Hosted by Edward Walton, Andrea Fisher, Rod Trent, and Brody Castle, the Microsoft Security Insight Show provides information, news, and tips on Microsoft security solutions.
Recorded March 14th, 2023. Welcome, family. How's everybody?
Hello, it's National Pie Day.
Pie Day.
What? Pie Day? Wow.
It's Pie Day.
It's 3/14, right?
It's National Everything Day. When's it going to be National? I don't know. Let's make one up. National Edward Day.
Every day is National Edward Day.
Oh, it is. You're just telling the truth. It is.
That's so nice.
So, as you guys can see, Edward and I are actually together physically. We are out in Redmond, Washington at Microsoft Studio H doing some training today.
Some super secret training. Don't tell anybody.
So maybe you'll be able to tell us something about that later in the year or something. Who knows? But what have you done since you've been there? You can't have just been there for training. You have to be doing something else.
Well, we did do a little wine tasting yesterday. We went out to Chef de Saint Michel and in Woodinville and had a couple glasses of wine.
Yeah, well, I got there late, so I had a quarter glass of wine, and they were really strict with the rules. No more pours. Tasting's over. My flight was late, so yeah, but it was good. It was so good. I bought 6 bottles. Shipped
So,
it home.
shout out to Chateau Saint Michel's.
Yep.
Sham. Yep.
When we get no kickbacks from them, we just like their wine. There you go.
Future sponsor.
What are you guys up to?
I'll let Brody go. He seems to be. By the way, Brody,
Yes.
are you enjoying a beverage there? By the way.
Oh, why? Yes, Rod. I'm enjoying some midday cyber tea. Thank you. For asking.
Very nice. That might be a hint, maybe, of who might be on the show today. We'll see, I guess.
Thank you for the wonderful segue. Oh, that's good. It's a vanilla. Nice. That's excellent. That's excellent. Plenty of things to do over on this end. I'm working with customers on a spin-off to a new tenant that's highly interesting. We're kind of focusing on their information protection front, and I'm working on enabling some purview governance, structured data, interesting items. And then on top of that, we're deploying a lot of Defender for Endpoint. It's super busy right now. And I have an exciting new public sector customer coming up in Canada that I'm really excited about. It's going to be an honor to work with them. So I'm basically just floored every day and keeping up. Yeah.
You pretty heavy on rights information management, right? Inside. That's what it compliance. I might need to pick your brain on something around that.
You know, I am, and it's coming up more and more. I find when I joined Microsoft just a few years ago, I was like very focused on like the Defender side of things, but it's so much information protection, rights management, quote unquote compliance, as you folks like to bug me about, has come up like a ton of new opportunities that everyone's understanding that it's a big important part of the overall picture. So yeah, Edward, little did I know that I would be kind of turning into an SME in this space, but it's
that's awesome.
It's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we need that. I tell you.
Yeah. It's the data, right? If the data is the prize, we got to treat everybody as an insider threat, right? Inadvertently or deliberately. So, but yeah, I'll pick your brain offline about it. It's nothing super deep. I just want to validate some stuff I think I know. I'm pretty sure I don't.
Well,
Edward, for you, I won't even bill you, Edward. For you.
You sure?
Yeah, I'm sure, bud.
You need my help. I'm billing you.
Okay.
No, I would.
Rod, what about you, bud?
What? Oh, well, I think everybody knows that I think for the past 4 years of my life, I've worked with Microsoft Sentinel every day. I'm still doing that. However, oh my goodness, the past month, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, it's also been, and I think we might have that as a topic discussion today sometime, artificial intelligence. Everybody seems to be interested in that, but I'm kind of focused more on the security of AI, obviously, and Sentinel, stuff like that. But somebody asked me earlier today, sent me a note over LinkedIn. do you work for OpenAI now? Because that's all I see from you anymore is all this AI stuff. And I'm like, no. It's just kind of an important discussion. But that's where my focus has kind of been.
As I iterated last week, it's a shiny new.
It's shiny new. Yeah. Basu, she loved that statement. I think she used it right after. So.
Oh, really? Hey, look at that. I need my credit, Vasu. I need editor's credit, author's credit.
It is shiny new. I don't think it's as shiny as everybody thinks, but we'll see.
Well, it's been around. I mean, you got the little clippy thing. So that'll be a great topic. What exactly is artificial intelligence? Because can you have intelligence without intellect? And so, and then if you go to humans, are we born with intelligence? So can you?
This is deep. This is deep.
Well, you got to realize inside of our cranium, some bigger than others, is the original quantum computer, right? Yeah. Because we can understand quantum spookiness, we can understand quantum entanglement and stuff in computers. They're still just looking at data sets.
Yeah.
So.
You sound like my golf coach. We all have a supercomputer.
That's why every movie we beat the robots because they think too rationally. Irrationality will help you beat the robots.
Thank you. I hope that keeps going. I hope we don't end up like Terminator. Thank you, Edward. Yeah.
With me, right? But the aliens are coming and they're hungry.
Yeah.
That's odd. Still doing a bunch of MDI stuff from my end. But obviously, Andrea and I are traveling, so we're always working. But I'm still doing MDI stuff. Still getting a lot of ask for that.
So. Nice. Good times.
All right.
So,
we have a special guest. Before we get there, though, I just want to mention to everybody, this is Women in Cybersecurity Month, right? Yay. That's where our focus is this month. I think it's super important for those that are just listening in because you've come to listen because it's Women in Cybersecurity Month. Just want you to know, all the newbies, this show is live every Wednesday. We're on obviously a special day, special time today because of our guest. Just to fit our guest in today, which is going to be super awesome. But normally it's live on Wednesdays, and every Monday it's pushed to a podcast. So all the podcast platforms you can find Microsoft Security Insight Show. We also have a Discord channel. A lot of our community as part of Microsoft Security Insights participate there, and a lot of peer help, a lot of community help there. So if that's of interest, you can check that out. Also, our Substack, our blog site, where Andrea is literally just killing it. Everything she writes, people just eat it like it's candy. So you need to check that out. I mentioned that too, though, because as soon as our show is over today, about an hour later, you will find the replay for this show out on Substack. And I'll post the banner here. Oh, that's the wrong one. There it is. Sorry. securityinsights.substack.com. You'll be able to find this episode and be able to listen to the replay. All right. Another thing that I want to talk about before we hand it over to our guest today and introduce our guest, we do have a survey that we're running right now, just a MSI show survey. Participants help us improve this show. We're always looking to improve, always looking to do things better, get the best guest, which we've absolutely had all the best guests here recently. Right. So just kind of want to continue that as we go along. As I mentioned, this is Women in Cybersecurity Month. Today, March 14th, we'll welcome our guest here shortly, but I do want to kind of mention that we've really had some really good shows the past couple weeks. Maria Thompson, the MISA lead on March 1st. There's the link for the replay if you want to listen to that. Basu was on last week. We talked about all things Star Trek, right, in relation to cybersecurity. So that was pretty interesting today. I'm sure we'll get into some other things next week. We have a couple cloud security PMs from the cloud Defender for Cloud Security team next week, Laura and Future. And then we're going to end Women in Cybersecurity Month with Elizabeth Stevens, Director of DC Cyber Risk Intelligence, which should be an amazing show. But so that's what we're doing. I think next week we'll talk a little bit about April as part of next week's show. April is MISA month.
MISA.
Right? Yeah, MISA. We talked to Maria that first episode of this month for Women in Cybersecurity. That was an awesome episode. Maria promised that she would come back for our December show for a dance off. So we're going to see if she actually does that. But that was an awesome show. But MISA is part of Maria's purview. And next month is going to be super awesome. We'll talk more about that next week. I am going to turn it back over to Andrea. Andrea, do we have a guest on today? And who might that be?
I am so excited. We have a guest coming today. You may know her from her podcast, which is called CyberT. You may know her as the corporate vice president at Microsoft, but here at the Microsoft Security Insights show, we refer to her as the goddess of cybersecurity. Here she is today to join us, Ann Johnson!
Hey, thank you so much. And it's really a pleasure to be here. And thanks for accommodating my schedule. Afternoon Cyber Tea runs every other Tuesday. So Tuesdays are my podcast days. So thank you. Yeah, we're on an off week for Afternoon Cyber Tea. So thanks for accommodating. And Brody, I appreciate your tea and everyone's tea. I had chai this morning because I needed some caffeine. I needed a big caffeine boost. So that's how I started my day.
Excellent. That's great. Well, I normally start my day with coffee, but my coffee machine's been on the fritz, and so we have plenty of tea here. It's lined up quite well.
And Ann, we were talking about this a little bit before you joined us earlier today, and I have to say, I have to admit, I love tea. Oh my goodness, I love tea. However, most days I need something a little bit stronger. Ed said that I should just have tea and put Red Bull in it, but I just can't do that either. So.
Ooh. No, but I mean,
yeah, right.
Ed, there's other things that go in Red Bull, depending on the event you're celebrating. So, but definitely not tea.
I guess when you're making coffee with Monster Energy drink, doesn't it?
Whatever. That works for you, Fred.
Yeah,
good. It doesn't affect me at all.
But thank you for having me. You do have a great guest lineup, and I hope I live up to expectations. Someone had made a comment overnight. So when I worked with them past on LinkedIn, and I read it, and I was like, "Well, that's a lot of pressure." I was like, "Hopefully, I don't suck when I come on your show."
I felt so bad last week, and I get excited about every guest. I'm like, "This is the best guest ever." Well, actually, Brody does that, and I kind of echo that, I guess. But still, I mean, every week I'm like, oh, we had such a great guest last week. And then that guest is like, they're afraid. Oh, my goodness, what can I bring? So this is just a relaxed, easy, discussion. Our audience just kind of loves, the flow of the show and stuff like that. So it's just a nice, relaxed, it's going to go great.
I thought we were going to ask a bunch of deep technical and licensing related questions, Rob.
Yeah, licensing.
I'll switch gears. Okay.
Yeah, you have the wrong person if that's what you're going to ask.
I was like, my connection.
Yeah. And I'm not a Trekkie, but I will tell you that R2D2 has a place of honor in my office.
Oh.
So he's sitting on the floor behind me.
We are equal opportunity Star Wars and Star Trek around this podcast. So
apparently there's like really strong opinions. I don't actually have a strong opinion. No. I just happen to like Star Wars. So
I like them both. I'm just a sci-fi fan. Give me sci-fi over anything. Well, except for comedy, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I see all that $6 million man paraphernalia in your office. So
yeah, there's a whole story behind that. I've told that before. I should actually write that into a blog post sometime so I can just send people to the link. I should.
Yeah, people can.
You know what? I think. Well, I didn't go to a great extent, but in the Must Learn KQL series, I do talk about $6 Million Man, and one of the exiting questions for the certificate is, "What is my favorite TV show?" And there's only one answer. They get it right no matter what. So.
Well, I think y'all need to ask me questions before I start asking questions, because as a podcast host,
I was going to say,
be natural for me to interview you.
So, Ann, we usually start asking all of the guests the same question. And so, we know that you have a rich career history in technology. Can you just spend a few minutes telling us how you got your start and a bit about what brought you to your current role at Microsoft?
Yeah, so I'll give this. People have heard this if they've heard me speak, but I'll give the synopsis. I had a scholarship and I had an acceptance to go to BYU Law School after undergrad. And I just at some point over that summer said, I don't want to go to law school. It had been like a lifelong dream, by the way. And my family was proud, and so I followed a boy and moved to Los Angeles, followed my college boyfriend.
As we do.
Yeah, so moved to LA because he had a job in LA, and I needed a job. Both of us had come from, not really financially solvent families, I would say. And so I needed a job. So I walked into a computer store and I applied for a job. They were hiring a floor salesperson. And I said, look, I know how to talk to people, right? Went to college on a speech scholarship. So I know how to talk to people and I understand something about computers. I've been using them. This was in the early days of PC. I'm pretty old. So early days of PCs. And, they hired me, but not as a salesperson. They said, you're this green kid from Utah, which I am. And I was in LA, big city. And, we're going to put you in the back. We want you to do our buying for the store, with all of our distributors. And if you can prove that you can negotiate our buying and bring in the right inventory, then we'll give you a shot at sales. And the rest is history. 30 some odd years later, I still have a career in tech. Because here's what I figured out. I figured out early on that tech is really fast paced and I need things that move fluidly. I am not a type of person that's going to sit at a desk 9 to 5 and do the same job. I knew that pretty early. I needed something that moved fast, something that changed frequently. So I took every possible vendor training course because I was at a reseller. So Microsoft, IBM, Apple, you name it, every vendor came in, Cisco, they gave us their certification training. I took every course I could possibly take. Nice. And developed a career from there. I was a network architect at one point in my career. I actually was an operations manager for a very large computer retailer. I did this at one point in my career, redid their front end operations. I mean, I've had a lot of different experiences, but they were all intentional to actually broaden my scope. I spent the majority of my career in sales, in some type of, sales function. And now I'm doing business development, which I've never done before. So the past couple of years, I'm doing business development because Peggy Johnson, who was here previously, asked me to. She said, we don't have expertise in our strategic partnerships and our M&A, which is what business development at Microsoft does around cybersecurity. So can you come over and take this remit? And, it's kind of sales, right? You're still doing deals. But you're building those partnerships. And then she said, and by the way, everyone in security, because, this will be my 23rd year, by the way, 23rd anniversary is next month. So if I don't know everyone, I've been living in a cave. She said, everyone in cybersecurity. So can you come do this? And that's where I am. And I'm loving it.
It's a great story.
I knew most of it, but not all of it. I did not know you were from Utah.
Yeah. So my parents, when I was born in New Jersey, and my parents, when I was quite young, moved to southern Utah. There's a whole lot of stories there, but here's what I will tell you. I'll give you the synopsis. My father was an over-the-road truck driver, so he could pretty much work wherever he lived wherever he wanted to live, and there happened to be an oil refinery that he would go to Long Beach and pick up crude oil and bring it back to this oil refinery that was not far. It was just over the border in Arizona from where we lived. And my parents also, I was born, Catholic, and my parents, when I was quite young, converted to Mormonism. So they went all in. They're like, we want to move to Utah. We want to be all in the community. Wow. So that is the story of how I ended up in Utah.
Okay.
Catholic to Mormonism. That's a story in itself. I think there was a decision at a kitchen table somewhere, and I would have loved to have heard that one.
Yeah, my father wasn't Catholic, so he was. My father was. By the way, my father was late father was British. Came over to the U.S. and he was Methodist, so he never converted to Catholicism. But this is just a little bit of substance of the Catholic Church a way long time ago. In order for my parents to get married in the church, they had to agree to raise their children Catholic. Yes, so I was the youngest. So as soon as I went through my first Holy Communion, which is, I don't know, 7 or 8, it's hard for me to remember now, obviously, that's when they converted to Mormonism. They said, okay, we've met, we checked the box. Our 4 kids all went through like this first benchmark. Now we can go be another religion, because my father never was, on board with the Catholic thing. So more than you need to know, but I always thought it's such an interesting part of my history. My parents were very religious. It's a very interesting part of my history.
Huh, that is interesting.
At the very beginning, when you were giving your introduction and your history and your bio, you stated that for the last 2 years plus, you've been working in business development, which you haven't done. And you also included that this oversight was over partnerships as well as M&A. In your 2 years, what are you seeing from partners, from the security landscape, and what are the challenges inside of it?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Edward. So because we cover such a broad breadth in the security landscape, every partnership we do in security, we're threading the needle, right? I believe we can partner with everyone. I believe, and Sentinel Sentinel, which I love, by the way, is a great example. We should partner with everyone for Sentinel because it makes reduces customer friction, right? We're meeting customers where they are. They want to roll out Sentinel. They may have one of our competitor, endpoint solutions, or one of our competitor. You talked about MDI. They may have a competitive solution in that space, right? So I believe we have an opportunity to partner with everyone, but we often are threading the needle in those partnerships to figure out what a win-win is. And then we have to land it with the field, right? The field needs to understand why we struck this partnership. Yeah, we know they compete with us here, but actually for your customer's benefit. And that's it, by the way, I start every partnership conversation with what is the customer benefit? That's the first lens. Then we go to what is Microsoft and the partner benefit. The first lens is what is the customer? How does 1 + 1 = 3? I know it sounds like a cliche, but that's how we start. If there's no customer benefit, we're not going to do the partnership. So let me start there. So then we have to land it with this huge field we have that has varying degrees of understanding, right? And that's always the complexity. But everybody wants to partner with Microsoft. Our phone rings. We're probably in a super unique role that we get mostly inbounds. It's rare that I'm actually calling a partner and saying, we want to partner with you. And then a lot of that's true of my engineering. Our engineering stakeholders or our sales stakeholders say, look, we need a partnership with X for whatever reason. And partnerships don't just include go-to-market. We do a lot of white label. There's stuff under the covers. We do OEM partnerships. There's all different kinds of partnerships we do.
And I can see what that could be challenging is probably forming it. It's not as hard as maintaining it. Right, making sure that North Star is continuing benefit to the customer, right? Yeah. And because it's always easy to get in bed, it's hard to get out.
Yeah, and how I would say it is that here's the challenge of being in BD. We're not an operational organization. We sign the partnership. Now we don't do it. We don't do it just alone. We have everyone at the table. Okay, we align across, but then we hand it to GPS, right? We hand it to the partner team and say, "Up to you to execute." We're not an execution arm. We're a very small org. We're not built to be an execution arm. So there's always gaps in understanding, and then we're following up and saying, "No. This is what everybody agreed to." And by the way, everyone meaning you were in the conversation. This is what everyone agreed to early. So the challenge often is, and then there's this challenge, Edward, about when do you leave a partnership, right? When is it no longer beneficial? Because not all partnerships, whether it be technology or your personal relationships, anyway, bad joke, but not all partnerships are meant to live your whole life, right? So when does it make sense to end that partnership? And those can be those partnership divorces, unless you're both on the same page, can be really hard too. There's some partnerships we go into and say, look, this is a 1-year partnership and that's all it's going to be. We need to fill a gap. And people are happy to, sign a deal with Microsoft because they get to say they're partnered with Microsoft and we're paying them something. And some people aren't as happy. So you always have to be, I'm a super transparent upfront person. I don't try to hide the ball on anything. And I think that really helps.
Well, thank you for filling in a knowledge gap that I had. I started my career in OCP, which is now GPS. So I never really understood where the directors were coming from. So now I understand.
Thank you, Ann. Hey, so speaking of partners, customers, et cetera, you speak to a lot of leaders in the cybersecurity ecosystem, founders, startups included. What are you hearing from them now? What are some trends? What's keeping leaders up at night, our favorite saying, when it comes to security, cybersecurity, et cetera?
Yeah, so I'm going to tackle that 2 ways. This weekend was particularly interesting when you think about founders and what's going on in the cybersecurity ecosystem, and I think that we should acknowledge that, right? With the largest bank for founders in the Silicon Valley being brought into receivership was a big moment for a lot of our founders, whether they had a banking relationship with them or not. Obviously, there was more impact if they had a banking relationship, but even for those who didn't have a banking relationship are rethinking financially how they run their businesses. And we've seen this huge paradigm shift from growth at any cost to the right growth with profitability. And it's going to be really harder even now. It was getting hard anyway. It's going to be really hard to raise money. So that's going to change the market too, or you're going to raise money at terms that you don't like. And that's going to change the dynamic in the market. So all that in one bucket says, okay, then what are the hardest problems that cyber needs to solve? And I want to talk about AI in a bit, but let's talk about AI as its own thing. What are the hardest problems customers need to solve today? They still don't have visibility. the posture thing. I bet you, I didn't get a chance yet to watch the Vasu show, but I bet you talked about posture. Customers still don't have visibility across their environment. And it's a huge gap. They don't know what they don't know, and that they're alarmed by that, right? They're more worried about what they don't know than the risks that they do know. The second thing is data. Data is everything, right? So whether the data is in Sentinel, whether the data is in Purview, whether the data is in any place, data security is having this renaissance. We had data security a long time ago, and now it's like having this renaissance. And I see there are a lot of data security startups, and I challenge anyone to differentiate them right now. And I challenge them to differentiate themselves, because you don't hear a lot of air between them, right? There's not a lot of gap between them right now. Those, I think, are the two biggest themes. And then cross-cloud. Cross-cloud will always be a theme, right? We don't want to roll out, everybody's solution. It's just like we don't want 10 endpoint agents. We don't want 10 cloud agents. So figure out how you build cross-cloud capabilities so we can look across our environment, not just the hyperscalers, but we want to think of our PaaS solutions, our SaaS solutions, all of that when I say cross-cloud.
Oh, that makes sense. Thank you, on good insights.
In your career, were you were always in sales, so never a operational role or director role like CISO?
I was never a CISO, no. And I thought about it over the years. There's a lot of people that have taken my career path, and then, because I'm very technical, which I think most of you know. But there's a lot of people who have taken my career path and gone to be a CISO, and I just said, you know what? I've operated very large sales organizations. So it's not the operations at scale. It's more I like to actually be out talking to different people, and in my car, in the old days, in my car, driving around and meeting with people, it worked for me. It worked for how my head works. And I just didn't think I would enjoy that type of work. And by the way, kudos to all of them, because that's one of the hardest jobs on the planet. There's no thanks, right? There's no thanks. There's like, if something goes wrong, you're blamed, but nobody's stopped by your office and saying, you did a great job today because we didn't have any attacks,
Well put.
Well, that you know about, because we don't have visibility. So
I beg to differ. I believe you were CISO. You were the Chief Information Sales Officer. There you go.
Love that.
Make it up, right? Man, wow. It's 30 years of doing anything. 23 years of doing anything is phenomenal, right?
I never planned it, but security changes daily. And if you've heard me thematically say that, I need that intellectual curiosity to have something that's dynamic.
Well, and I think you hit on something. There's a lot of people that work in, either IT or security or engineering, whatever it happens to be. I'm that way, right? I've got this ADHD thing. I have to be doing something different all the time, or I'm not satisfied, and I have to be fulfilled in those things that I do. I think I'm so fortunate. I'm fortunate to work at Microsoft, because I'm doing something today that I wasn't doing a month ago or 6 months ago, because it's a necessity, right? I feel invested in this thing, but I'm able to kind of do that. I'm able to switch. But for the people, particularly in IT Pro, who are looking into a role in security, and they're looking to go a little bit deeper, a lot of times you can't do that at an organization, right? It's easy to do at Microsoft because you can do those lateral adjustments. At other things, particularly IT Pros, how would you look at that and say, how I was an IT Pro, I worked in, I'm not even going to ask if it was Novell or whatever it happened to be at the time. I'm not going to age you, because I know Novell. I was a CNE at one time. But how can they kind of transition from this role or this job or this skill set to maybe cybersecurity or security? Is it easy? Are there tools out there that that they can take advantage of, or something like that?
Yeah, I think that. So look, I had my first job in tech with no formal training. I have my degree is a dual major in political science and public relations, just to give you, remember law school, just to give you some perspective, right? So I have had no formal computer training. Everything I've had is vendor training. And I received my first job because I knew, and I will age myself, I knew how to write macros in Lotus 1-2-3, and I knew how to use WordPerfect.
Wow.
Awesome.
Remember Utah? All those companies were Utah-based companies.
Yeah.
So we weren't on the Microsoft stack. So here's what I would say. I think that as an IT pro, even in a Fortune company that isn't a vendor like Microsoft, right? And you're right, at Microsoft, you can have a dozen different careers at Microsoft throughout your career. But there are opportunities. We don't have enough talent. So let me start there. We keep challenging the industry that you can't have every job opening, can't have 5 to 7 years of reverse engineering experience, right, as a requirement. The funny one that made its way around the industry a few years ago was you must have 10 years of Kubernetes security experience. Well, Kubernetes wasn't 10 years old, right? So, we have these ridiculous job requirements. So what I would say to IT pros is the first thing is SANS. I'm a huge, huge, huge fan of SANS training. I'm a huge fan of going to Black Hat, taking some courses, doing some networking. Go to RSA, take some credentials, do some networking. It's a small industry. For as big of an industry as it is, it's so you started the show by saying I'm the goddess of security. And what I tell my family, and this is, pretty true. I said, for the 50,000 people global that really care about cybersecurity might know who I am. That's not a lot of people. Okay. It's true. It's still a pretty small industry. So the networking is just as important as the skilling. Signal your intent. Go meet with your CISO or somebody in their organization, right? Start developing those relationships, but also take some courses. Understand the basics. Go through some SANS or Black Hat or Microsoft, by the way, has some great certifications. Yeah. So take some courses.
In our Learn modules, in fact, we've got a event coming up 2 weeks. Microsoft Secure will have a lot of Learn modules, a lot of live things going on. Yep, so that people can take advantage of it. You mentioned talking to your family, mentioning about the number of people that know you in this kind of small industry. Do you also have your family address you as goddess of cybersecurity?
No.
At the dinner table.
So that's funny.
Will that change after this episode?
So I have a 21, almost 22-year-old child who barely addresses me at all, other than I need some more money. The address there is I want a new car and I need more money. And my husband, who's retired now, but he spent his career in tech. By the way, he spent the majority of his career in storage. That's actually where we met. I was in storage right before security, but he just looks at me and just kind of shakes his head and says, good luck. Because he's retired and off in the sunset and doesn't want to hear about this technology anymore, right? He's like, and when I was explaining ChatGPT to him, he was like, "Oh, that's nice. I'm going to go play another round of golf, hon." So no, they don't address me that way.
I'd like to touch on something you said about how to get in, take the courses. I have the same learning mentality. Just allow me to read it, allow me to put my hands on it, and I've done a lot other than probably write code and be a DBA. But we were talking about how to get in. So it seems to be an oxymoron because you hear that there's a huge deficit of verifiable talent, but we have unrealistic qualifications for that. But I still see that the cyber realm is like the gates are being guarded. You have to know the secret handshake to get in. And I always thought that, the diversity and inclusion is a huge component to help, rectify this deficit. Why it's getting better, it doesn't seem like it's really being taken seriously to fix this problem, not having enough people. What is your take on the D&I inside cyber right now? And is that something that needs constant attention to make sure it's not just put off to the wayside?
Yeah, it needs constant attention. It's an everyday thing, and it has to be deliberate and intentional. And it's improving, right? I will tell you, and I don't remember the exact year, but it's probably less than 4 years ago. The percentage of women in cybersecurity was 11%. It's now 23.
Oh, that's good.
Going on 30. It's still not great, but think about that increase, right? Then you get to people of color, right? It's even less. It's less than 10%. By the way, and you get intersectionality between a woman and person of color, you're getting the picture. We have a long way to go. Here's the good news on that, right? I actually spoke at RSA about this a couple of years ago about how we actually it's pragmatic that we lean into diversity and inclusion because we have all these job openings. So forget about it's the right thing to do. It's also pragmatic because we have to fill these job openings. And to fill these job openings, we need different talent and we need to recruit from different places. So there's a couple big initiatives, right? There's WESIS, which is Women in Cybersecurity. There's Executive Women's Forum. There's Girl Security. So I've kind of covered there's others, but I just kind of like the top three for women. There's Share the Mic in Cyber, which is for younger cybersecurity professionals that was started by two women. That's like this viral campaign. Should I keep going?
Yes, please.
Okay, just checking. And then there's also an organization that I have helped co-found, the Western Washington Seattle chapter, because there wasn't one. It's a nationwide organization called Cybersecurity. It used to be the International Consortium of Minority Cybersecurity Professionals, ICMCP. They have rebranded, thankfully, as Cybersecurity because it was a lot to say. And I founded recently with Tim Youngblood, who's the CISO at T-Mobile, and with Malcolm Waters, who's the CEO at Ovation, which is a security consulting firm, the Western Washington chapter, so that we can, again, bring more people into cyber. So this continual effort, this continual drumbeat of diversity, but also the fact that there are now, college courses for cyber across the country. There used to just be a couple, right? So there's that. There's other different types of orgs, but we have to talk about it every day. We have to lean into it every day, because with every step we take forward, we take a couple of back. And I won't even get into some of the commentary about like the SCVP failure. There are people that are not operating in good faith around the conversation around diversity and inclusion, but every study shows us that more diverse organizations make better decisions. And I know I'm going long, but I want to make one really important point. It's not enough just to have diversity around race or gender or identity. You also need diversity around educational backgrounds. You need diversity around geography. You need diversity around socioeconomic backgrounds, because if all of your hires are MIT graduates, even if they are women, and men, they're still going to think about a problem the same way. We have really hard problems in cyber, so we need people who think about problems differently to help solve those problems.
Right. And a lot of times that different thinking comes from different experiences, different background, and all kinds of things. You need every bit of that. Yeah, absolutely.
I will give Microsoft credit. Having attended a HBCU, Historical Black University or College University, I see Microsoft prominent when they have the HBCU conferences to recruit. So they are getting off the beaten path of the Harvard, the MIT, the Cal Berkeleys, right? Go to somewhere where you're going to find a gym. And I look beyond just getting a job. There are some future entrepreneurs that are being missed out upon if you don't go to these places.
I'll tell you something else that we haven't publicly announced yet, but it's in the public domain. We just haven't announced it yet. So we have an initiative that started with a gentleman in my team named Zane Elrod to work with Black Tech Street in Tulsa. And he became familiar with the CEO, Terrence Billingsley, and started working with him. And it's a little bit convoluted about how he got introduced. It's not super relevant to the story. But via Zane's initiative with Black Tech Street and getting Desmond Forbes, who's in my org, on board, and getting Chris Young, who's my leader in my org, on board, we have actually been able to do things like offer broadband, and we're bringing them into the initiatives we have around community college scholarships. It's grassroots things like that, too, that make a huge difference. And the Black Tech Street effort in Tulsa, by the way, is a multi-company effort. Now, Microsoft's engaged, our competitors are engaged, government organizations, but it's just things we do around those initiatives, and having one person, Zane, hammered the organization. I'm not telling you his tenacity, because he wasn't getting the support, and he just he said, "Can I keep going?" I said, "Keep going. I'm going to support you, but you need support from a lot of other orgs." And he got SEALA involved. He got Michael Ford involved. He got a whole lot of orgs involved. It's those grassroots things and people caring, because Zane's an ally, right? It's people like Zane caring enough to keep. He did it for a year before he got the right amount of attention. He never gave up, and that's what I said. It's a constant drumbeat.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Just in this, Edward and I are out in Seattle doing this training, and I ran into, it's so great to see people in person that we haven't seen in so long. And someone asked me, he's got 2 daughters in college, and he asked me if I would talk to them. Said they're really struggling. They're taking these, computer science classes. They're the only girls in the class, and the guys are not necessarily all that nice to them. And they're not sure they want to stick it out. So I think there's so much work to be done at so many different levels on getting those people to feel welcome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that mentoring we lose girls still between 6th grade and 9th grade. I think they drop out of STEM type courses, and that mentoring of girls at that very young age, things like the work Girl Security does, I don't know if you saw the Girl Scouts have a badge now for cybersecurity. They announced it a few years ago with Palo Alto Networks, and now CISA is their sponsor for it. So it's really cool that the Girl Scouts now have a cybersecurity badge.
So is there any work being done to kind of capture those girls that we're kind of losing from that effort? Because, hey, I have a 14-year-old and she loves to code right now. Of course, it's all Minecraft stuff, but she wants to code, right? But how do I nurture that?
I'm going to answer your question. I'm also going to tell you something funny. So my daughter has zero interest in tech. She grew up with 2 tech parents and has wants nothing to do with other than to use Snapchat or Instagram or whatever it is she uses. Anyway, all right. So here's what I would say. There's a lot of initiatives, Rod, both in Microsoft, but also around the U.S. in different places for STEM education for girls. And I will take an action item. I'm not ready to articulate what those are off the top of my head, but I'll take an action item to follow up with you, and then you can put them on the show.
That would
There's
be awesome.
a tremendous amount of initiatives to keep girls in STEM education.
Super awesome. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah,
thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you very much.
Speaking of this, this gap, the skills gap that we have, and we're trying to invest in those different areas to try to fill these gaps. I think this kind of is a really good segue into kind of a topic that's top of my mind right now, because I think this industry, it's kind of slapped everybody in the face within the past 6 weeks. I mean, it's been going on for a while, but all of a sudden, even Microsoft is like, okay, AI is it, right? I think this gives us opportunity. How should we kind of approach AI from a security perspective, but also from kind of that skills gap perspective? Have you thought about that yet?
Yeah, so we think about it a lot. We think about it a lot, and I'm actually hiring a role to focus specifically on AI. And folks on my team were surprised because what I put in the job requirement was you must know it is a requirement to have some machine learning AI experience. Cyber's optional. And people were like, what? And I said, yeah, we have plenty of cyber people on the team, but we don't have plenty of people that really understand or because on my team, we don't just have people doing deals. We have strategists, we have some deep technical architect type people. And I said, we need somebody who actually understands this technology and we can bring them along in cyber. So I started, it's probably been, and he'll remember it, 5 years ago, six years ago, working with Ram Shankar, if those of you who know Ram in the Azure team, working on AI. And we started this journey on adversarial AI, right? Protecting AI learning models, protecting data from poisoning, because our belief is the bad actors aren't just at some point going to use AI to further their cause. The bad actors are also going to attack AI models and attack data because it's not just the future of security, it's the future of everything, right? So Ram has actually written a book that he gave me the privilege of reading and making suggestions to that is publishing, I think, in April. So it's something that's worth reading, and it's available on the large book reseller, who I won't mention on your show, but you can find the link to it. But he's written a book on the topic of adversarial AI. We wrote some blogs together on the topic of adversarial AI and did a couple podcasts together on that topic years ago. And then I wrote a blog series that dates to, it's probably been 3 years. I wrote a blog series on the promise of AI, right? Because we kept hearing it could do all these really cool things. And I said, well, what can it really do? And the use cases I came up with were with a lot of people's input, by the way. This isn't, me, again, with asking a lot of folks was like IoT. Right? You should be able to understand what a device is, even if you've never seen it before, because it's purpose-built to do a certain thing. And if it's not doing that thing, or if it's making calls that aren't appropriate, or it has anomalous behavior, you should be able to detect that really quickly with machine learning and then quarantine it in some way, right? The second thing was the SOC, right? And we've seen improvements. You know this in our own SOC operations, large, like 80+% improvements in our SOC operation efficiency by doing two things: automating tasks that are low-level tasks. But the second thing is we've given machine learning and AI to actually show if you have 100 things in your queue, what's most important for the SOC analyst? Well, this one's going to actually take down the company, this one's just going to impact Ann Johnson's laptop, right? So let's go work on this one. And we actually can expose
Ann Johnson
those
one,
events.
Of course.
Yeah, I'll deal with my laptop. It's got its own issues, but in all seriousness, we've actually made significant improvements using our AI and ML models. There is so much promise. I'm not a big silver bullet security person because I've been doing it long enough that everything's, this is going to be the best thing ever for security. I do think AI is going to be a step change for security. We are ahead of the bad actors, but they are going to adopt it. You know that.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people see at least AI right now because of its intrusiveness, right? It's very in your face, the model tuning and the model creation and stuff like that. there's some work that has to be done, which is going to, I think, help create some brand new job roles, right? So in the future. But I think in the very near future, we're going to see this kind of like the Apple approach to technology, where it just kind of blends in.
Oh, I'm sorry, Rod. We have to talk about Brody's puppy.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
No, that's quite all right.
What is the name of the puppy?
His name is Kavik, Kavik. He's a Siberian Husky.
You're gorgeous, Kavik. Hi, pup.
Say
You're
something.
Hi, Kavik. Are you going to? You're a Siberian Husky. You usually will talk to us.
You know what? He's very vocal when it's time for his chew, or it's time for dinner time, or any other dog is around, or he's not getting his way. I could go on, but he's being very well behaved today.
He's got his priorities straight. His food, and I have 3 rescue pups, 2 who are sitting in the room with me. I'm very blessed that neither one of them has decided to be vocal during this event. Anyway, sorry, Rod. You were making a really important point, and I saw a dog, and that just
you know what? When it comes to animals and pets, there's nothing more important, right? The family and yeah, I was just going down the route talking about AI and how it eventually should blend in. It should just be part of what we use every day. We don't even think about it.
We shouldn't be thinking about it, right? And I took advantage of ChatGPT and had it write I needed to write a syllabus for a non-technical audience on adversarial AI. It actually did a really, really good job.
So I have this. I guess it's not a job I want, but it's the job I have in my family. Anytime there's a birthday, because I'm a writer, they just assume that I can write greetings. So they hand me the card to write the inside of the greeting card, and every time I'm just like, oh my goodness. And I whine about it. I use ChatGPT now to write. I say, write something really nice, sentimental, loving for this individual. And it's awesome. I don't have to do that anymore.
But I wrote something to thank my team. I wrote, please gratitude for my team. And I sent it out to the team. My admin sent me a note back, said ChatGPT needs a thesaurus. It repeated great and exciting. She's like, it needs a thesaurus because it repeated some of the gratitude words. But in all seriousness, I do think AI, as we build AI models to make SOC operations more efficient, to find threats more quickly, we were able to find malware in milliseconds. The folks over in the engineering team are doing some phenomenal work that you will see shortly, right? That the world will see shortly. They're doing some phenomenal work that we'll see iteratively. There's an announced event for productivity. Is it today, tomorrow, the next day? With Sadia and Jared Spataro are doing an event for AI and productivity in the next couple of days, right? So we're doing a lot with it, and I do think it's going to change the way we work. It's going to ultimately change the way we live. I like AI because I like the promise, not just of cybersecurity, but predicting clean water supplies, where are food supplies, predicting where climate change is going to impact, getting ahead of those things so that they don't become disasters, and we don't have communities that are put out of their, they have to leave the area they live because it's no longer livable, right? How can we get ahead of that? There's so much that AI can do, but you have to also think then you have this other pillar called ethics and responsibility, right? Because there's also a lot of bad stuff that AI can do, and you always have to have an ethical, responsible implementation of it.
Well, that's where governance and compliance come in, and hopefully our platforms can help address that for everyone here eventually. So, yeah.
So we segue into the topic of AI. So let's dovetail back into your mission and leadership role at Microsoft. And one of the things you mentioned was mergers and acquisitions. We know that AI is the new shiny. What are the other new shinies that you are prioritizing and looking at? What do you believe is the next thing? I really should put my eye on this too. Do you have something that you can share about what is another new shiny?
Yeah. A couple of things. So what are we, I can absolutely share what we're working on right now. I mentioned that data security is a huge topic for us, and data security as a huge topic. I can't talk about the exact project, but you can see Microsoft make significant enhancements and step changes into, from a data security standpoint, in the way we're going to think about governance and the way we're going to think about compliance. So just stay tuned for some big investments there, as we continue to think about the Purview suite and the Purview activities. that would be one area that we're heavily invested in. We're doing a lot of work on ZTNA, Edward. We have our own solution now in private preview. We're doing a lot of partnering work related to how we meet customers where they are and have conditional access be a hero for ZTNA solutions. And I spend a lot of time with my friend Joy Chick, who's just by the way, if you don't spend any time with Joy Chick, for those who don't know her, she's the president of identity at Microsoft. She's a genius. She's unbelievable. She's this awesome engineering leader. And she is just one of the, you should try to get her on the show. You should try to convince her to come on the show.
We should actually.
Yeah. But Joy's amazing. So I spent a lot of time with her thinking about what the next generation of ZTNA looks like for us. And beyond that, we're doing a lot of work around posture right now to think about how we think about end-to-end posture. Are there partnerships we could strike there to give us visibility into maybe some endpoints that we don't have visibility into? And cross-cloud. Cross-cloud is the other big one. Again, are there partnerships we can bring to bear that'll round out, our Defender for Cloud story, right? Or, and you're going to see huge investments in build too from Sean Bice's team.
There's a lot of opportunity to pivot either way. I think I was telling Andrew yesterday, I have caught the Kubernetes bugs and the container security bug now. And I was talking nerd, and I think a responsible. You always like to go get that old nerdy stuff to do. I'm like, yeah, I never knew it was cool. So I may start playing around with container, defense and protection. It seems to be interesting.
Fun.
Yeah, Microsoft, we do have a Defender for Container offering, and I'm sure you know this.
Yeah. Well, we can't talk anymore, Edward. I'm sorry. We have nothing in common.
But also our Defender suite continues to be more extensible, right, across a lot of different platforms, which is really meeting customers where they are.
Agreed.
So do you want to ask your favorite question, Edward?
Yes. I told you guys I'm not going to follow the script. I'm going to answer the hard question. So, Ms. Johnson, in your expert opinion, I would like to ask you this following question. Of the Defender suites products, which is your favorite?
Oh, boy. There's no good answer for this, but I'm going to tell you what my favorite is.
She answered that ahead of time.
Choices.
Yeah.
MCAS, Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps, and Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps and MCAS. Which is your favorite?
Out of those?
Yes, because that's his favorite. So he thinks everyone should agree.
So my I don't have favorites. I don't have favorite children in our portfolio.
Of course.
I think that, however, Sentinel is my baby. I was there at the very beginning, so Sentinel is my baby. But I actually think Microsoft Defender for Endpoint is the most robust, mature of the suite, and we're making the rest of the suite as robust and mature. And I give Rob Lefferts and his team a lot of credit because they've done tremendous work. And the Microsoft Defender for Cloud team has come a long way too, and Defender for Cloud Apps has come a long way. And we're on that curve, right? And I came here seven years ago because I said to myself, if Microsoft wants to execute in security, there's no company that can do it better. And we've proven that, right? It has just been, this journey has exceeded all of my expectations. And we love living in Seattle. We were back living in New Jersey at the time. My family loves Seattle too. So that's an added bonus.
Yeah, Seattle's nice. I was stationed years ago. So
I'm surprised Ed doesn't enjoy Defender for Cloud since there is a container workload.
I am enjoying Defender for Cloud now. Yeah.
There is a container workload and it's quite robust.
I'm playing around with it. I'm nerding out all of a sudden. So, let the record show that Miss Ann Johnson declared that Microsoft Defender for Cloud App was her favorite. I heard it.
You can rewrite history. There's a transcript.
Yeah. So,
we're running up on time, and I know you probably have another thing you have to get to. Just super quick. I'm a huge fan of Afternoon Cyber Tea. Your guest lineup is amazing. I listen to every show. I know you've got a huge following. We want to promote that extra quick. And if you have 2 seconds for a question, how has podcasting in general contributed to your professional growth? And what are some key takeaways you've learned from your guests over the years?
Boy, it's a really good question, because when I started this podcast, it was actually the first security podcast at Microsoft. And there were actually some folks that say, hey, podcasts, they don't get that much of an audience. And I said, look, let me try. Okay, I'll pay for it even. I'll pay for it out of my own budget. let me try. Let's do 8 episodes in a year, right? So we're not bold and ambitious here. Let's just and see if anyone comes, right? Here's what we've learned. 1, doing 8 episodes a year is no way to build a listenership. So we now do it every other week. So it's a load. We take the month of July off. I need a month off. Even the production team's like, well, you really shouldn't take a month off. I said, I'm taking a month off. We can do reruns, okay? But I need time off because it's a lot of work. And Greg Ormsby, who's my chief of staff and the co-producer and does my comms work, Greg's is awesome. Just this. If I didn't have Greg, I wouldn't be able to do it, right? Because I suggest guests, I invite guests, and then he takes it from there. He works with production and he writes scripts. He works with their communication people and gets scripts approved. He gets all the PR approved because a lot of our guests have these own motions because they're in big companies, right? But here's what we try to do with Afternoon Cyber Tea. We try to have industry luminaries. We try to have academics. We have a couple Microsoft. We don't want to be all Microsoft talking to Microsoft, so we have a couple Microsoft people a season. And then we try to have a couple diverse, by the way, Edward, up-and-comers. We lean into having diverse up-and-comers. And it's been a really good mix. So you no matter who you are listening to it, some episodes may work better for you than others. You may say, wow, we're not a technical podcast. We have had guests on, like Ian Coldwater came on and talked about container security a few years ago, right? We have had some really technical episodes, don't get me wrong, but it's not designed to be a technical podcast. It's designed to be the business of security podcast and the leadership podcast. Our CISO episodes do remarkably well. Our top episode, and I'm going to say this because I can give them it's the added benefit of me giving him a plug. The Chris Young episode is still our number 1 listened to episode. So I think it's because he's an industry luminary and people know him quite well. And also he has the Microsoft following. So it's still, we have as many Microsoft as non-Microsoft listeners, which was important to me. I didn't want to just be an all Microsoft podcast. So what have I learned from my guests? When you're doing a podcast, it's funny. I did a recording recently where there was a really awkward silence because I said something and I expected the person to respond. So the first thing I learned is everyone isn't always going to respond as you expect. And of course, Greg asked the studio, he said, hey, can you cut that in post-production, right? Because our podcast isn't live. So the first thing is don't have an expectation because your guests may go someplace that even though you have a script, your guests may actually go someplace, and that's okay. You need to be dynamic and on the fly. But I've learned a lot about leadership. We've had a lot of leadership podcasts. I'll give a little plug here. We have Deb Cupp coming up soon, nice. Who leads the president of the Americas for Microsoft. That'll be a great leadership podcast. So we've had a lot of great leaders on. I've learned a lot about the challenges CISOs have. We do have CISOs on the podcast. And I've met people that I would never have had the opportunity to meet. Right. So, and I love meeting people. So it's been an experience. Afternoon Cyber Tea now this season and last season, every episode has grown, right? Our listenership has grown and we're actually exceeding all of our metrics at this point in time. So we're really happy. We're going to still refine going into next season, which will start in August. We're still going to make some refinements, but we're pretty happy with the state of the podcast right now.
Thank you so much.
Well, I know that your schedule is immensely packed. Thank you so much, Ms. Johnson, for coming on and sharing your insight. I think the more that we can get you in front of the masses in some form or fashion is better for everyone. And I can say with confidence after being on our show, your show, listenership will go up 422%. Chat GPT said, you make something up, right? So, well, thank you so much.
GPT.
Yeah, and thank you. By the way, thank you. I've really enjoyed being on the show. I love the format, and I'll listen more. And good luck with your future shows.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ann.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank
you, everyone, for tuning in. Don't forget, we have another episode for Women in Cybersecurity next week. We'll see you then.
See you then.
Thanks, everyone.